The torches hadn't even burned down from the night watch when they came for her. Nia felt the hands before she understood what was happening. Rough fingers closed around her arms, yanking her from the narrow cot in the healer's quarters where she'd fallen asleep, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Blood matted her hair on the left side. The wound at her temple throbbed with each heartbeat, fresh enough that she could still taste copper on her tongue. "Move!" The command came from somewhere behind her. 2 enforcers she'd treated for training injuries last month. They wouldn't meet her eyes. Dawn light cut through the gaps in the wooden shutters as they hauled her across the compound. Her bare feet scraped against packed earth. She tried to find her footing, tried to understand why her shoulder burned where the bond mark lived beneath her skin. It felt wrong, muted, like someone had wrapped it in cloth and buried it deep. The pack hall doors stood open. 300 wolves waited inside. Nia's stomach dropped as they dragged her through the threshold. Every rank, every family, every wolf who had ever come to her for healing or comfort, or a steady hand in crisis. They lined the walls in silence. Some wouldn't look at her. Others stared with something close to hatred. At the center of the hall, the Elder Council sat in their carved seats. 5 wolves who had guided this pack for 3 generations. And standing before them, broad-shouldered and rigid with fury, was Darius, her mate. His dark skin caught the torchlight, the strong planes of his face set in an expression she had never seen directed at her. Cold. Absolute. The kind of look he reserved for wolves who had broken pack law beyond forgiveness. "Bring her forward." Nia's knees buckled as the enforcer shoved her to the center of the hall. She caught herself before she fell, straightening despite the way her vision swam. The wound at her temple had reopened. She could feel blood trickling down her cheek. "Darius," her voice came out rough. "What is this?" "You know what this is." He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. Close enough that she should have felt the bond flare between them. Instead, there was only that strange, muffled distance. "I found the documents in your quarters," his voice carried to every corner of the hall. "Territory maps. Patrol schedules. Names of our vulnerable families. All of it marked for delivery to the Ashford pack." The crowd shifted. A low growl built somewhere in the back of the room. "That's impossible!" Nia's heart slammed against her ribs. I would never!" "The evidence was recovered from beneath your floorboards," one of the elders spoke. A woman named Constance with silver-streaked locks and eyes that had always been kind. Now they held only disappointment. "Sealed with your scent. Your handwriting." "Someone put it there." Nia turned, searching the crowd for a single friendly face. "This is a setup. I've given everything to this pack. I've healed your children, your elders, your—" "Enough." Darius's command cut through her words like a blade. The alpha authority in his voice pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. "I trusted you." He stepped closer still. His hand rose toward her shoulder. Toward the mark. "I bound myself to you. And you sold us to our enemies?" "I didn't." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. "Darius, listen to me. Someone attacked me last night. I was gathering herbs at the eastern border, and someone struck me from behind. When I woke up, I was bleeding in the healer's quarters, and I don't know how I got there." "Convenient," the word came from somewhere in the crowd. Then another voice. And another. "Traitor?" "Ashford spy." "Should have known a low-born healer would." Silence. Darius didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The hall went quiet instantly. His fingers brushed the collar of her sleep shirt, pushing the fabric aside to expose the mark on her shoulder. The bond mark. A pattern of interlocking crescents that had appeared the night they claimed each other, 3 years ago. It should have been warm to the touch. It should have pulsed with the connection between them. Instead, it looked faded, gray at the edges. "Do you know what the council has decided?" Darius's voice was soft now, almost gentle. That scared her more than the shouting. "Please," she reached for his hand. He pulled away. "Whatever you think you found, it's not real. Someone is framing me. Just give me time to prove." "The council has decided." He spoke over her like she hadn't said anything at all. "For the crime of treason against the Blackwood Pack, you are hereby stripped of your rank as pack healer. Your bond to this pack is severed. Your bond to me." He paused. Something flickered in his dark eyes. For one desperate second, Nia thought she saw doubt. Then it was gone. "Your bond to me is severed." His palm pressed flat against the mark. The pain hit like lightning. Nia screamed as fire ripped through her shoulder, through her chest, through every nerve ending she possessed. It felt like being torn in half, like having her heart pulled out through her ribs while she was still breathing. She collapsed to her knees. The crowd watched in silence as the mark on her shoulder began to change. The crescents that had bound her to Darius, to this pack, to everything she had built for the past decade, they twisted, darkened, scarred over into something ugly and permanent. When the burning finally stopped, Nia couldn't feel him anymore. The bond was gone, cut clean as a severed limb. "You have until sunset to leave pack territory," Darius's voice came from somewhere far away. She couldn't lift her head to look at him. "If you're found within our borders after dark, the enforcers have orders to execute you on sight." Footsteps. The crowd parting. Someone, Darius, it had to be Darius, walking away from her without a backward glance. Nia knelt on the stone floor of the pack hall, with 300 wolves watching and blood dripping down her face and a ruined bond mark throbbing on her shoulder. The healer who had saved dozens of their lives. The woman who had sat with their dying and brought their children safely into the world. The mate their alpha had chosen and then destroyed in front of everyone she had ever called family. No one spoke. No one moved to help her. Finally, one of the enforcers stepped forward. "Get up. We'll escort you to the border." Nia's hands shook as she pushed herself to her feet. The world tilted. She caught herself on nothing, forced her spine straight, forced her chin up even though every instinct screamed at her to curl into a ball and howl. She would not give them that. "I didn't do this," her voice carried clear across the hall, steady despite the tears tracking through the blood on her cheeks. "And when the truth comes out, and it will, I hope you remember that you stood here and watched." No one answered. The enforcers flanked her as she walked toward the doors. The crowd parted to let her pass. She kept her eyes forward, kept her breathing even, kept moving even when her legs threatened to give out beneath her. 300 wolves. Not one of them spoke in her defense. The morning sun hit her face as she stepped outside. Too bright. Too warm for a day when everything she had built had just been burned to ash. Behind her, the pack hall doors swung closed, with a sound like a coffin lid falling. Nia had until sunset to disappear. And somewhere in this pack, the real traitor was watching her go. The border came faster than she expected. Or maybe time had simply stopped making sense. One moment, she was walking through pack territory with enforcers at her back, and the next, she was standing at the edge of Blackwood land, staring at the tree line that marked the end of everything she knew. "This is as far as we go." The taller enforcer, Marcus, she remembered, she'd set his broken arm 2 winters ago, gestured toward the forest beyond. "Cross that ridge and you're in unclaimed territory. The old safe house is half a mile northwest. Been abandoned since the border skirmishes ended." Nia turned to look at him. "You're telling me where to shelter?" Something shifted in his expression. Guilt, maybe. or just discomfort. I'm telling you where the pack doesn't patrol. What you do with that information is your business." The other enforcer was already walking away. Marcus held her gaze for a beat longer, then followed without another word. She was alone. The silence pressed in around her like a physical weight. No bond humming in her chest. No pack connection threading through her awareness. Just the wind through the trees, and the distant call of birds, and the hollow space where everything she loved used to live. Nia started walking. Her feet found the path almost without conscious thought. She'd worked this border dozens of times over the years, gathering herbs that only grew in the transitional zone between territories. She knew these woods. Knew the safe house Marcus had mentioned, a stone structure built during the last war with the Ashford pack. The building emerged from the undergrowth like a ghost. Moss covered the walls. Vines climbed through gaps where windows had once been. But the roof looked intact, and the door still hung on its hinges. She pushed inside. Dust motes swirled in the thin light filtering through the cracks. A fireplace took up one wall, cold and dark. Shelves lined another, empty except for a few rusted cans and what might have been blankets before the moths got to them. But someone had been here recently. Nia froze, her healer's instincts sharpening despite her exhaustion. Fresh footprints in the dust near the far corner. A crate that had been moved, its drag marks still visible on the floor. And there, half hidden behind a loose stone in the wall. She crossed the room in 3 steps. Her fingers found the edge of the stone and pried it loose. Pause. Long leather. A leather satchel, supple and new, pressed into a hollow in the wall. Nia pulled it free with shaking hands. The buckles gave way easily. Inside she found papers. Dozens of them. Ledgers bound in dark cloth, their pages filled with neat columns of numbers and names and... Her breath caught. Territory maps. The same territory maps Darius had accused her of stealing. But these weren't copies. These were originals, marked with corrections and notes in a handwriting she recognized immediately. She'd seen it 100 times on requisition forms and patrol reports and the official documents that crossed her healing quarters. Kendrick's handwriting. Darius's beta. Nia's knees gave out. She hit the floor hard, the ledgers spilling across her lap as she processed what she was seeing. Shipping manifests for supplies that had never reached the pack stores. Payment records from an account she didn't recognize. Letters, actual letters, addressed to someone called Brother Wolf and signed with the Ashford pack seal. Kendrick had been selling them out for months. Maybe years. And when the Ashford pack's last raid had failed to breach the border, when the council had started asking questions about the security leak, Kendrick had needed a scapegoat. He'd chosen her. Oh, goddess. Nia pressed her hand to her mouth. The wound at her temple throbbed. Her ruined bond mark burned with phantom pain. He planted the evidence in my quarters. He must have been the one who attacked me. The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. Her gathering trip to the eastern border. The blow to her head that came out of nowhere. Waking up in her quarters with no memory of how she got there. Kendrick had been watching her, waiting for the right moment to stage the discovery. And Darius had believed him. Her mate, her former mate, had looked at her kneeling on the floor with blood on her face, and he had chosen his beta's lies over a decade of trust. The tears came without warning. Hot and angry and completely useless. Nia let them fall. There was no one here to see. No pack watching her crumble. Just these 4 walls, and the evidence of her innocence, and the absolute wreckage of her life. She didn't know how long she sat there. Long enough for the light to shift. Long enough for the tears to dry and the rage to settle into something colder. Something that felt almost like purpose. The sound of footsteps outside snapped her back to alertness. Nia grabbed for the nearest object, a rusted iron poker from the fireplace, and pressed herself against the wall beside the door. Her heart hammered against her ribs. If Kendrick had sent someone to finish what the council started, if the enforcers had changed their minds about letting her reach the border. The door creaked open. A woman's voice, low and urgent. "Nia? Are you in here? Please tell me Marcus wasn't lying about where you went." Zuri. Nia's grip on the poker loosened. She knew that voice. Had known it since they were both teenagers training in the pack's healing arts. Zuri had been her apprentice for 2 years. Her friend for longer than that. Her friend who hadn't spoken a word in her defense during the trial. "Why are you here?" Nia didn't move from her position against the wall. "Come to watch me bleed out in exile?" Zuri stepped into the safe house. Her deep brown skin was sheened with sweat, her coiled hair pulled back in a hasty knot. She looked like she'd run the entire way from pack territory. "I came to help." Zuri held up her hands, showing she carried nothing but a canvas bag slung over one shoulder. "Nia, I couldn't speak at the trial. Kendrick was watching me. He's been watching everyone who might question what happened. And I'm supposed to believe that? Believe this." Zuri reached into her bag and pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. "I went to your quarters after the enforcers cleared out. Found something they missed. Someone was in a hurry when they planted those documents. They left traces." She unwrapped the bundle. Inside lay a torn scrap of fabric. Dark leather, the kind used for the beta's formal coat. And clinging to it, unmistakable even in the dim light, were several strands of hair. Kendrick's scent rose from the evidence like smoke. "I scent-marked it before anyone else could touch it." Zuri's voice shook. "His hair. His scent. On the floorboards where they found the fake evidence. This proves someone else was in your quarters, Nia. Someone who had no business being there." Nia stared at the fabric. At the hair. At everything she needed to destroy Kendrick's lies and expose the real traitor. "It's not enough." Her voice came out hollow. "The council already made their ruling. Darius already severed the bond. They're not going to reopen the case just because you found some hair on my floor. Then make it enough." Zuri pressed the evidence into her hands. "You have the ledgers. I saw you looking at them when I came in. You have proof that Kendrick's been betraying the pack for months. Combined with my testimony and this scent evidence, you have everything you need to bring him down." "And Darius?" The name tasted like ash in her mouth. What happens to the alpha who destroyed his mate without bothering to investigate? Zuri's expression hardened. "That's for the council to decide. But Nia, you have to come back. The monthly assembly is in 3 days. Every wolf in the pack will be there. If you present this evidence in front of everyone, if you make them see what really happened, they'll have to answer for what they did." The words hung in the dusty air between them. Nia looked down at the leather scrap in her hands, at the ledgers scattered across the floor, at everything Kendrick had hidden in this abandoned safe house, so confident in his manipulation that he'd never bothered to destroy the proof. She'd been cast out as a traitor, but she was coming back as something else entirely. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing so we can keep telling stories like this. The pack hall had never felt smaller than it did now. Nia stood at the back entrance, the one used by servants and healers when the main doors were reserved for ceremony. 3 days of planning. 3 days of hiding in the safe house while Zuri smuggled her food and information. 3 days of watching the scar on her shoulder slowly begin to change. It wasn't healing. Not exactly. But the angry red had faded to something almost silver at the edges. Like her body was already learning to live without the bond that had been ripped away. Inside, she could hear the murmur of 300 voices. The monthly assembly had drawn every wolf in Blackwood territory, just as Zuri had promised. And according to the whispers that had reached the safe house, tonight was supposed to be a celebration. Darius was announcing his new Luna. Nia's hands tightened on the leather satchel. The ledgers inside pressed against her hip. Kendrick's payment records. The Ashford letters. Zuri's testimony, written out in careful detail and sealed with her healer's mark. Everything she needed to burn their lies to the ground. "You're sure about this?" Zuri appeared at her elbow, breath coming fast. She'd slipped away from the assembly to meet her here. "Once you walk in there, there's no going back. Either they believe you or they execute me on sight." Nia met her friend's eyes. "I know." "Nia. I didn't betray this pack." The words came out steady. "Certain. I won't spend the rest of my life hiding in the woods while Kendrick laughs at how easily he destroyed me. Either I walk out of that hall with my name cleared, or I don't walk out at all." Zuri's jaw tightened. Then she nodded once, sharp and final. "The elders sit in the front row. Constance is the one you need to convince. She's been asking questions about your case. Quiet ones, but questions." "And Darius?" "He'll be at the center. With her." Zuri's voice dropped. "Aaliyah. She's been wearing the ceremonial pendant all week. Everyone knows what tonight is about." Aaliyah. The name hit like a blow to the chest. Nia had treated her for a training injury last summer. Young. Beautiful. Ambitious in ways that had always made Nia uncomfortable without quite understanding why. Now she understood perfectly. "Let's get this over with." She pushed through the servants' entrance before she could change her mind. The pack hall stretched before her, torchlight dancing across walls hung with blackwood banners. Every seat was filled. Families pressed together on wooden benches, children perched on their parents' laps, elders claiming the carved chairs at the front. And at the center of it all, Darius? He stood on the raised platform where the Alpha addressed his people, his broad shoulders filling out the ceremonial leathers he only wore for formal occasions. His dark skin gleamed in the firelight. His face, that face she had loved, had traced with her fingers in the quiet hours before dawn, was set in an expression of proud satisfaction. Beside him, one hand resting on his arm, Aaliyah smiled at the assembled wolves. "Tonight marks a new chapter for our pack." Darius's voice carried to every corner of the hall. "After recent difficulties, the Blackwood pack moves forward. Stronger. United. And I am honored to present to you." "Honored?" Nia's voice cut through his speech like a blade. The crowd turned as one. 300 faces swiveling toward the back of the hall, where a ghost had just walked through the door. Shock rippled through the assembly. Someone gasped. A child asked loudly why the traitor lady was back. An elder rose half out of his seat before settling again, eyes wide. Nia walked forward. Her feet carried her down the center aisle, past the families who had trusted her with their children's health, past the warriors she had stitched back together after border skirmishes, past every wolf who had watched her exile and said nothing. "Guards." Darius's voice was ice. "Remove her." 2 enforcers moved to intercept her. Nia didn't slow down. "I invoke the right of public testimony." The words rang out clear and strong. Pack law. Ancient law. The kind even an Alpha couldn't ignore without losing face before his people. Any wolf accused before this council may present evidence in their own defense. You denied me that right 3 days ago. I'm claiming it now. The enforcers hesitated. She was convicted. Kendrick's voice came from somewhere to Darius's left. Nia finally let herself look at him. The beta stood with his arms crossed, dark features arranged in an expression of righteous anger. The council ruled. Her bond was severed. She has no standing here. Then let the council rule again. Nia stopped at the edge of the platform. Close enough to see the tension in Darius's jaw. Close enough to watch Aaliyah's smile falter. Unless the Blackwood Pack is afraid of the truth. Silence stretched through the hall. Then Constance spoke. The eldest of the council, her silver-streaked locks catching the torchlight as she rose from her seat. Pack law is clear. The right of public testimony cannot be denied, regardless of prior rulings. Let her speak. This is ridiculous, Kendrick stepped forward. She's a convicted traitor trying to... Let her speak, another elder. Then another. The council members exchanging glances, their expressions ranging from curious to deeply uncomfortable. Darius's hand clenched at his side. For a long moment, Nia thought he would order the guards to take her anyway. To hell with pack law, to hell with the council, to hell with the woman he had once called his mate. Then he stepped back. Speak, the word came out through gritted teeth. But make it quick. We have a ceremony to complete. Nia climbed the platform. The crowd pressed forward, straining to see. She could feel their attention like a physical weight. The same wolves who had watched her exile. The same wolves who had called her traitor. Now they would watch her tear Kendrick's lies apart. 3 days ago, I was accused of selling pack secrets to the Ashford wolves. She opened the satchel with steady hands. Evidence was presented. Territory maps. Patrol schedules. Documents sealed with my scent and found hidden in my quarters. Evidence you planted there. Kendrick's voice dripped contempt. Evidence you planted there. Nia pulled out the first ledger and held it up for the council to see. This is a record of payments from the Ashford Pack spanning the last 18 months. Each transaction is logged with dates, amounts, and the code name of the recipient. Brother Wolf. She opened the ledger to a page she had marked with a strip of cloth. The handwriting belongs to your beta. The crowd stirred. Nia heard whispers spreading like fire through dry grass. That proves nothing. Kendrick's composure cracked slightly. Anyone could forge a ledger. Anyone could. I also have letters. Nia pulled them from the satchel one by one. Correspondence between Brother Wolf and the Ashford Alpha's second. Discussing patrol routes. Discussing which families would be easiest to target. Discussing how much the Ashford Pack was willing to pay for continued intelligence. She turned to face the council directly. And I have a witness. Zuri stepped forward from where she had been waiting at the edge of the crowd. Her chin lifted as 300 eyes found her. I searched Nia's quarters after the enforcers cleared out. Zuri's voice carried clearly through the hall. I found physical evidence that someone else had been there before the documents were discovered. Leather from a beta's formal coat. Hair that carries Kendrick's scent. I scent-marked it myself before anyone else could contaminate the evidence. She held up the bundle for everyone to see. Kendrick was in Nia's quarters the night before the accusation. He planted those documents himself. The whispers became a roar. Nia watched the color drain from Kendrick's face. Watched his eyes dart toward the exits, calculating escape routes. Watched him realize that the web he had spun was collapsing around him. This is absurd, his voice rose over the crowd. She's clearly fabricated all of this. The healer is lying. They're both lying. Then explain the ledgers. Constance's voice cut through the chaos. The elder had risen from her seat, her expression carved from stone. Explain why your handwriting appears in records of payments from our enemies. Explain why your scent was found in quarters you had no reason to enter. Kendrick turned to Darius. Alpha, you can't possibly believe this. I've served you faithfully for years. I've been your right hand, your brother in all but blood. This woman is a traitor. She's manipulating the council, manipulating everyone. You have to see that. Darius stared at his beta. Nia watched emotions war across her former mate's face. Denial, doubt. The horrible dawning realization that he had made a terrible mistake. That he had severed his bond with his mate, had cast her out to die, had done it all on the word of a man who had been betraying him from the start. The evidence is clear. Constance addressed the full council now. We demand an accounting, not just from the beta, but from the alpha, who condemned an innocent wolf without proper investigation. The hall went silent. Every eye turned to Darius. His authority hung by a thread. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Darius stood at the center of his pack hall, surrounded by 300 wolves who had watched him condemn his mate 3 days ago. The same wolves who now stared at him with something far worse than anger. Doubt. I trusted my beta. His voice came out rough, uncertain, nothing like the alpha command that had once made her knees weak. The evidence was clear. The documents were found in her quarters, sealed with her scent. Scent can be transferred. Constance's words fell like stones. Any healer knows this. Any wolf with basic knowledge of pack law knows this. You didn't investigate. You didn't question. You severed a mate bond in front of your entire pack based on planted evidence and the word of a traitor. Nia watched her former mate flinch. Good. The council will now deliberate. Another elder rose. A man named Solomon, whose grandchildren Nia had delivered into this world. Both the beta and the alpha will answer for their actions. Wait. Kendrick's voice cracked. He was backing toward the edge of the platform, his eyes wild. You can't. This is a mistake. I was loyal. I was always loyal. She's the one who... He lunged. Not toward the door. Toward Nia. His hand closed around her throat before anyone could move. His breath was hot against her face, his grip crushing. If I'm going down, you're coming with me. The world narrowed to the pressure on her windpipe. Then, it was gone. 3 warriors had Kendrick pinned to the platform before Nia could even register what happened. His face was pressed against the wood, his arms twisted behind his back, his snarls muffled by the knee someone had planted between his shoulder blades. That settles any remaining questions about his character. Constance's voice was ice. Take him to the holding cells. The council will determine his fate at dawn. They dragged him away. Nia's hand rose to her throat. The bruises would bloom purple by morning. Just another mark to add to the collection. Nia! Darius stepped toward her. His hand reached out, then froze midair. I made a mistake. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since she'd walked into this hall. The man she had loved for 10 years. The alpha she had trusted with her life, her body, her bond. The mate who had cut her loose without a second thought. A mistake. The word tasted like ash. You severed our bond. You watched me kneel on this floor with blood on my face, and you chose to believe a man who is selling your pack to our enemies. You gave me until sunset to leave or die. I know. His voice broke. Nia, I know. I was wrong. I was so wrong, and I don't know how to. You can't. The words stopped him cold. You can't fix this. Nia felt something shift in her chest. Not anger anymore. Something quieter. Something final. You didn't just make a mistake, Darius. You showed me exactly who you are. You showed me that when it mattered, when my life was on the line, you couldn't be bothered to look for the truth. I'll do anything. He dropped to his knees. The alpha of the Blackwood pack, kneeling before the woman he had exiled. Please, tell me how to make this right. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Nia looked down at him. At the man she had once imagined spending eternity with. The father she had hoped to give her children. The partner she had trusted to stand beside her through anything. He had failed that test so completely that she could barely remember why she had loved him. The council will determine what happens to you. Her voice carried clear across the hall. That's not my decision to make. But I want you to understand something. She crouched down until she was eye level with him. Even if they strip you of your rank, even if they banish you the way you banished me, even if you spend the rest of your life trying to earn back what you destroyed. She let the silence stretch. Let him hope. I will never be your mate again. What we had is dead. You killed it yourself. She straightened. Counsel. She turned to face the elders. I've presented my evidence. My name has been cleared. I ask for nothing else from this pack. Constance studied her with ancient eyes. The position of pack healer remains vacant. You would be welcomed back with full honors. No. The word fell into the silence like a stone into still water. I gave this pack everything I had. Nia felt the truth of it settle into her bones. I healed your sick. I delivered your children. I sat with your dying and eased their passage. And when I needed you to believe in me, when I needed just one wolf to speak in my defense, she swept her gaze across the assembly. You were silent. Shame rippled through the crowd. Wolves who had known her for years suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. I'm not staying here. Nia shouldered her satchel. I'm not coming back. You can rebuild your pack without me. Learn to tend your own wounds. And what of the Alpha? Solomon asked. The council must rule on his failure of judgment. Nia paused at the edge of the platform. She could ask for his rank, could demand that he suffer the same exile he had inflicted on her, could watch him kneel on this floor and have his authority stripped away while 300 wolves looked on. The thought was tempting. But revenge wouldn't give her back the bond he had severed, wouldn't heal the scar on her shoulder, wouldn't erase the memory of kneeling in her own blood, while the man who swore to protect her chose her destruction. Do what pack law requires. She didn't look at him. He failed his duties as alpha and as mate. Whatever consequences that demands. I trust the council to deliver them. She stepped off the platform. The crowd parted for her, this time not because they feared her, because they were ashamed to stand in her path. Nia walked down the center aisle of the pack hall, past the families she had served, past the warriors she had healed, past Aaliyah, whose ceremonial pendant now looked like nothing more than a bitter joke. Behind her, she heard Constance's voice ring out. Darius of Blackwood, you stand accused of condemning your bonded mate without proper investigation. You stand accused of severing a sacred bond based on fabricated evidence. You stand accused of bringing shame upon the Alpha line through reckless judgment. How do you answer? Nia didn't stop to hear his response. The pack hall doors stood open ahead of her. Sunlight poured through the gap, warm and golden. A new day. A new life. She paused at the threshold. Zuri was waiting just outside, her face tight with worry. Nia? What happened? I heard shouting and then... It's over. Nia felt the words settle into her chest like a breath finally released. The council has the evidence. Kendrick is in custody. And She looked back at the hall. At the pack that had been her whole world for a decade. I'm done. Where will you go? Good question. The unclaimed territories stretched beyond the Blackwood borders, wild lands where a healer's skills would always be welcome. Places where no one knew her name, or her scars, or the story of how an alpha had destroyed his mate for a traitor's lies. Somewhere new. Nia stepped into the sunlight. Somewhere I can build something that's mine. Behind her, she heard the council pronounce their judgment. Darius's rank being stripped, his authority passing to the elders until a new alpha could be chosen. His voice, broken, pleading, calling her name one last time. She didn't look back. The gates of Blackwood territory rose ahead of her, massive wooden structures that had marked the boundary of her world for 10 years. Guards watched from the towers, their faces uncertain. Nia walked through. The gates swung closed behind her with a sound like a chapter ending. Ahead, the road stretched toward the horizon. Unknown. Uncertain. Entirely hers. The scar on her shoulder had stopped hurting.